Hey, and come check us out at humblenorthamerica.com for all your Dad and Change podcast needs. Come see what else we got going on in our humble world, and don't forget to follow us on Dad and Change at YouTube, Instagram, and wherever else you get your podcasts.
Rick Wild and Black, old school, calling me back. Rock the slide, dump the mic, and pack the Mac, and my smell, right? Give me a pin.
So here's a question, age-old question. Is it better in your professional career, if you have children, to stand on business, right? Keep your integrity, or sort of keep your mouth closed, go with the flow, make your money? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know which one is best. I know which one I chose and continue to choose. I know the pros and the cons with both of them. And I think it really depends on your situation and where you're at and what position you're in. I think about Malcolm X, right, whose house was firebombed, burned down. They used the Molotov cocktails, burned the house down. He gets the family out. The next day or next couple of days, he winds up going to Detroit to speak. And at the outset of the speech, he goes out on stage and he apologizes for showing up without a tie on. You know, he usually shows up in the 60s, full suit, full tie, the whole thing. So he apologizes for that and explains that everybody got out of the house unscathed, but the smoke damaged his clothing. So the only thing that he had was this shirt and coat without a tie. But he'd rather finish the speech, go out there and talk to people, as long as they could understand why he was in that situation, because his daughters needed to know that they had a father that stood for something, that they had a father that would fight no matter what the consequences were, and, you know, he would stand on his principles. Later, obviously, we know he's assassinated for standing on those principles, which is the ultimate sacrifice. And I took that to heart, right? That's the ultimate sacrifice. That's the ultimate of what you can do. And now the children don't have a father because you have principles. And is that cost personally okay? And is that cost okay for everyone that depends on you? The children, we'll say the children's mother, whoever else is dependent on you in your life. Conversely, Steve Harvey has a show, right? Contemporary comic, has a conversation with Monique, another comic, and basically tells her that you got to get along, go along to get along, because there are people that are depending on her. His example was there's people that are dependent on him, so he goes out here, he makes his money, he doesn't make waves, because the next generation, his children and nieces and nephews and whomever else, are depending on his wealth and his wealth management to secure better places in their lives and the lives of the people to come. Now, you know, it depends on what side of the fence you fall on. Is Malcolm X a militant or a hero? Is Steve Harvey and Uncle Tom or a hero? I don't know. You know, I used to work for one of the sheriff's offices in Northern California, and I was very demonstrative and very verbal about things that went on that were corrupt or racist or sexist or, you know, any sort of bias. And that cost me. At the end, I was let go from that place, not for what it is that they said I was let go for, but that was the trumped up case in order to get rid of me for running my mouth, you know. And then I wound up writing a book about that experience and trying to illustrate how it is that those things work, how it is that you can run into bias and corruption in any of these different types of businesses, and that they'll cost you. And we run into crossroads as fathers if we decide that we are the heads of the families, if we are the person that sort of runs the family, that exemplifies what that family is going to stand for, then eventually there will be a crossroads where we have to choose, should I stand on this business? Should I stand on my principles regardless of what the price is? Or do I owe it to the children to swallow my pride and move on so that they have baseball cleats and and soccer payments and whatever else it is that the children need. And that's a very difficult position to be placed in. You know, everyone's a hero when it's free, right? You run into a burning building, everybody's going to give you credit for that. So it's easy to choose right from wrong, but it's very difficult when each decision is going to cost you something big. You know, on the one hand, it costs us our pride and our integrity. You know, now we're getting called into work and we have to do everything the boss says because that's what we're paid to do. On the other hand, it costs us potential for earning, right? So you wind up getting fired. Now you don't have that job at all. Do you find another job? Are you independently wealthy? Are you able to move forward on your own or in another industry or another team or what have you? And those are questions. But the big deal is your integrity for sale? If the price is high enough, will you sell it? Right? And so it's easy to stand on principles when you're close to retirement, when you have money in the bank, when you don't need the company that it is that you're working for. It's very easy to stand on those principles. It's very difficult when you're young in the industry and maybe it's your dream. You want to be a professional athlete and you realize, oh, wow, this is very corrupt here. Do you say something your first day or do you just go along because you're happy to be there? And so I think that when we look at these men that are out there standing on principle, you have to allow for where they are in their lives, right? The principal price is different depending on where you're at in your life. It would have been different for me to stand up and say, hey, I call foul in my industry early on in my industry before I had gotten the things that I wanted, before I gotten the things that I needed, before I was able to secure housing and food and a vehicle, before I was able to get assignments that I wanted to get. It would be very daring for me to stand up and say, wait a minute, I don't agree with the things that are going on, versus at a time where I don't really need too much from you. You understand what I'm saying? And so then at that point, the person that's standing up for the principles, it's not as admirable and it's not as such of a strong point. But I mean, I don't know, where do we stand on this? Are we protecting our principles at all cost in order to exemplify that behavior for the child so that later on the child is not a victim, the child is able to push forward with their principles so that we don't put them in positions where they have to compromise those things? Or are we in a position where it makes the most sense to afford the child the opportunities and the access that are needed despite protection of our pride and our morals and our integrity? Where do we stand? I'd love that discussion. I'd love to hear from people about what their choices are. And I don't fault either one. I know personally, like I say, principles are important. And the faster we are able to become independent, the quicker we are able to stand on our morality despite what the scenario is, right? When you graduate from high school and you go to college and then you're out in the world by yourself and you're moving forward and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to get this new job. And then there's the crossroads, right? There's that line where you think, okay, this isn't necessarily right. What should I do? It's very difficult. It's very difficult to choose the right path, right? And so the faster, let's say, for instance, you graduate from college, you're 22 years old, and you are independent at 23, right? Self-made, whatever that is. The faster you're able to do that, the less likely it is that you'll find these crossroads, the less likely it is that you will have to compromise morality, and the shorter the span, if you do have to compromise it, that it lasts. And therein lies the goal. The goal is to become independent so that we can stand on our business, right? So that we can stand in the face of issues and fight through them with a clear conscience, right? And the longer you're hanging on to somebody else's business, the longer you're hanging on to the company or the boss or whomever, the longer you are in a position that you may have to compromise yourself. And once you start, I had a partner that used to say, you can't stop, right? Once you start sucking up, you can't stop. You can't stand and hold a flag up in the air and say, hey, this is a foul. Well, you've been sucking up for 10 years, man. Who do you think you are? You understand what I'm saying? And so if we want to cherish our integrity, if we want to protect it, then we must get ourselves in a position as quickly as possible so that we don't have to face those temptations and those compromises. Ultimately, the question that you have to ask yourself is the money worth it, right? Is the money worth the integrity check or the other way around? And are we able to get both simultaneously? Are we able to get in a position where we're able to keep our integrity and keep the check coming at the same time? That's a fine line. There's an ability and a talent there in trying to balance that. It can be done. And I think that the way it can be done is that we have to be aware of it, and we have to understand when enough is enough on either side. When is enough money and enough credit and enough professional growth worth it? Is it this is enough? I don't need more. That's fine. When is the money level enough? Right? When is the integrity enough? When do I say, okay, I've proven myself enough, I can kind of slide and do some different things? So anyway, hey, think about it. Tune in for the next episode. Have a great day.
Remember the crew, whatever you do, I keep it close. Remember the clues, so when you're lost, you know what to do. Return to the spot and drop it from view. When it was with you, I wasn't a cop, he wasn't a fool, he wasn't a flop, but he was my dude and he was my dog, and that was my true. We making it rock, you hearing it hot?